Welcome to Spacewire. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more updates. The message from Mar-a-Lago was unmistakable, echoing across borders and reverberating through the halls of power in both Washington and Ottawa. Donald Trump, eyeing a political comeback and eager to reassert his influence on the world stage, demanded that Canada open the oil taps, insisting that the flow of energy north to south was not just a matter of convenience, but of necessity. He framed it as a matter of security and economic stability, expecting Canada to deliver as always, painting the relationship as one of mutual reliance, though with the US firmly in the driver's seat. But this time, Ottawa hesitated. The Canadian government, facing mounting pressure from environmental groups and a shifting global energy landscape, was no longer so quick to comply. Trump's proclamation was more than a trade request. It was a political thunderclap, designed to rally his base, dominate headlines, and remind Canada of its supposed obligations to its southern neighbor. The demand put Prime Minister Trudeau in a bind, caught between a powerful neighbor and a rapidly changing world. He faced a dilemma: risk angering the US or risk alienating a new generation of Canadians demanding climate action. For decades, the US-Canada energy relationship seemed unbreakable, symbolized by projects like Keystone XL and a long history of cross-border cooperation. But the world of 2025 is not 2015. Political winds have shifted and global energy conversations have changed. Renewable energy is on the rise, and climate commitments are reshaping national priorities. The old assumptions were about to be tested. Would the tried-and-true partnership hold, or would new realities force a dramatic shift? Would Canada bow to US pressure, or chart a new course, one that could redefine its role as an energy supplier and a global citizen? The answer would define not just a trade relationship, but Canada's future on the world stage, influencing its alliances, its economy, and its reputation as a leader in the fight against climate change. Ottawa was forced to weigh loyalty against new opportunities, balancing the demands of tradition with the promise of innovation and sustainability. The world watched, waiting for Canada's response to America's loud demand. Every newsroom, every trading floor, every government office was abuzz with speculation. The outcome would send shockwaves through global energy markets, shaping the future of North American cooperation and the world's transition to a new energy era. Ottawa's response was subtle but seismic. Behind closed doors, Canadian leaders weighed their options carefully, understanding the gravity of the moment. The world was watching, and every move would have consequences. Instead of issuing a direct refusal to its southern neighbor, Canada made a bold pivot, announcing landmark energy deals with major Asian and European economies, notably excluding the United States. This was a calculated shift, signaling a new direction in Canadian foreign policy. Oil tankers that once routinely sailed to American ports now charted ambitious new courses across both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, carrying Canadian energy to distant shores. Major agreements with South Korea, Japan, Germany, and France signaled the dawn of a new era. These deals weren't just about selling oil, they were about forging strategic alliances and building trust with new partners. These weren't just simple sales. They were long-term partnerships, with foreign investments pouring into Canadian infrastructure. New pipelines and export terminals were designed specifically to bypass the US entirely, giving Canada more control over its own resources. The Global Gateway strategy was about more than just profit. It was about resilience, reducing economic risk by diversifying customers and ensuring that Canada's prosperity didn't depend on a single market. In effect, Canada was buying its own independence, no longer putting all its eggs in the American basket. This newfound autonomy allowed Canadian producers to negotiate from a position of strength. The message to Washington was unmistakable. Canada would now pursue its own interests, even if it meant redefining its relationship with its closest ally. The era of Canada as a junior energy partner was over. Canadian workers and companies now stood at the forefront of a global energy transformation. A quiet revolution in North American trade had begun, reshaping the continent's economic landscape and setting the stage for a new chapter in Canada's history. Canada's pivot was driven by more than just politics. It was a matter of survival, opportunity, and a desire for long-term security. As the world's energy landscape shifted, Canadian leaders realized they needed to adapt quickly or risk being left behind. The stakes were high, and the choices made would shape the nation's future for decades. Years of unpredictable US policy, trade disputes, and sudden tariffs made Ottawa increasingly wary of relying on a single, often volatile partner. Each new disagreement or policy shift in Washington sent shockwaves through Canadian industries, highlighting the risks of putting all their eggs in one basket. In contrast, Asian and European markets offered something different: stability, premium prices, and the promise of long-term contracts. These regions were eager to invest in Canadian energy, seeing it as a reliable and ethical source. For Canada, this meant not just new customers but new allies on the world stage. Meanwhile, the US was ramping up its own oil production, becoming less dependent on Canadian imports. This shift made the American market less reliable and forced Canada to look elsewhere for growth. Asia's booming demand for energy created a perfect opening for Canada to step in. The region's rapid industrialization and growing middle class meant a hunger for resources that Canada was well positioned to satisfy. Following the money, Canada found new partners eager to invest, sign deals, and buy Canadian oil and gas. These relationships brought in billions in foreign investment, fueling economic growth and innovation at home. National pride played a role too. Many Canadians wanted to be more than just a resource depot for the US. They wanted to show the world that Canada could chart its own course and stand tall as an independent energy power. The pivot was more than a business move. It was a statement of sovereignty and ambition. It signaled to the world that Canada was ready to take control of its own destiny and compete on a global scale. At home, the move was widely popular, seen as both smart and assertive. Canadians felt a renewed sense of confidence, proud to see their country taking bold steps on the international stage. With new deals and investments pouring in, Canada was seizing control of its economic destiny, ensuring prosperity for future generations. The world took notice. Canada was no longer just a quiet neighbor to the north, but a key global player shaping the future of energy. The fallout was immediate. A chill settled over US-Canada relations. Washington felt betrayed, seeing Canada's pivot as a political slight, not just an economic move. High-level meetings grew tense. Cooperation on border and trade issues became strained. US industries reliant on Canadian oil faced uncertainty, lobbying for solutions or seeking pricier alternatives. In Canada, not everyone cheered. Some worried about risking the American relationship for short-term gains. The century-old bond between the two nations was tested. The US could no longer take Canada for granted. Canada proved it could act independently, leveraging its resources on the world stage. The automatic partnership was gone, replaced by a more complex transactional relationship. Both countries now had to navigate their interests with new caution. Canada's move sent shockwaves through global energy markets. Oil trading floors buzzed as supply routes shifted overnight. Asian and European nations celebrated new stability, less reliant on the Middle East or Russia. OPEC faced new competition, forcing a rethink of prices and production. Oil importing nations gained leverage. The old market order was disrupted. Shipping and logistics boomed. Demand for tankers and new port facilities soared. Canada's pivot accelerated a global realignment, redrawing trade maps and supply chains. The world's energy chessboard had a new player. Every nation had to rethink its next move. The ripples would reshape markets and alliances for years to come. For most, global energy politics became real at the gas pump. In the US, less Canadian oil meant higher prices. Refineries scrambled for new, costlier sources. Consumers felt the pinch: more expensive commutes, pricier goods, rising inflation. Businesses faced higher operating costs, passing them on to customers. Meanwhile, Europe and Asia enjoyed more stable prices thanks to their new Canadian deals. Strategic energy policy had direct, everyday consequences. The world's interconnectedness was on full display. A decision in Ottawa affected wallets in Ohio. The price at the pump became a symbol of shifting geopolitics. Energy policy was no longer abstract, it was personal. Canada's oil pivot marked a turning point in global energy. The old order, dominated by a few powers, was giving way to a multipolar world. Resource-rich nations like Canada discovered new leverage, building global networks and diversifying customers. Rising Asian demand and instability elsewhere made reliable suppliers more valuable than ever. Canada's move became a blueprint for others. The US could no longer assume easy access. True partnerships and diplomacy were now essential. America faced new pressure to compete and invest in its own energy future. The global energy map was being redrawn in real time. This was about more than oil. It was about sovereignty, strategy, and a new world order. The sands of energy were shifting, and only the adaptable would thrive.